Okay, so welcome to video number 13. Just got to mark this off, otherwise I'm in trouble. So, since we've been talking about jaws and teeth, it's apt to talk about the prey spectrum in this video number 13. So, the great white shark's prey spectrum is enormous. It's an apex predator, so it's right at the top of the food chain. So you got this food pyramid. There's a great white shark, right at the top of the food pyramid, and the pyramid goes down like that. And great white sharks are highly opportunistic animals, and what I mean by that is that if they're hungry, they can basically hunt and kill just about anything they want, and they will feed on different things. One great white shark, young white sharks do a lot of feeding off the bottom, and one young white shark had 54 crabs in its stomach. So they're opportunistic. It went along and there was crabs, and it chomped up the crabs. But they can also be very discerning. When the prey, they are discerning. I mean, they change their prey spectrum. They change what they eat. When they can go eat seals and feed on seals, they'll feed on seals, and then at the right time they'll move away and they'll start feeding on small sharks, other shark species, or skates and rays, or salmon, or whatever it may be. So their prey spectrum is very wide. They're opportunistic, and they're also they're pretty picky feeders as well. They're specific about what they want to feed on as well. So they'll specifically go to a certain area to feed on a certain prey item. But great white sharks feed on porpoises, they feed on dolphins, they feed on seals, they feed on small whales. They will feed, as I explained, they'll feed on carrion, like big baleen whales that have died. They will feed on squid, they'll feed on crabs, a number of different fish species, tuna. Basically everything falls under the great white shark's food chain. It's at the top of the food chain. It's a super predator. It's out there, and it can kill and feed on whatever it wants to. Now, I did mention this, and we're going to talk about this in behavior, but the great white shark is listed as a macro predator. Now, a macro predator is a predator which kills and consumes prey smaller than itself. But I don't agree with that. And when I wrote a paper years ago, as I explained earlier, I think I explained it earlier in this series, I wrote a paper on population dynamics of great white sharks. And in the introduction, I said that the great white shark is a macro predator. However, it can attack and kill prey larger than itself. And the guys reviewing my paper, Peter Klimley and Dave Ainley, I don't know Dave Ainley very well, but Peter Klimley is a friend of mine. Awesome guys. Peter Klimley ripped me a new asshole, and Dave Ainley, when it came to me stating that a great white shark will attack and kill something larger than itself. And this is interesting, and I'll talk about it in behavior as well. But many kayaks have been attacked by great white sharks. There's been some fatalities. I know several kayakers that have been attacked by great white sharks. And this kayak is moving to the water. So there's somebody sitting in the kayak, and the kayak can be 4 meters long, can be up to 6 meters long, depending on what kind of kayak it is. Some of them are narrower, some of them are wider. The fishing ones are wider. And they've all been, each different kind of kayak has been, at some point in time, attacked by a great white shark. In fact, just a couple of months ago, a few months ago in Mossel Bay, a kayaker was attacked by a great white shark. Shark came along and bit his kayak. And very recently, another very good friend of mine, an expert in shark attack. His name is Ralph, and he put onto Facebook a incident where a kayaker was attacked by a great white shark. And then this often happens. It often happens. And the thing is that many of these kayaks are 4, 5, 6 meters long, and they get attacked by sharks that are smaller than the kayak. There was one case in California where I think it was a couple, a husband and wife, went out kayaking, and they never returned. And they found one of the kayaks with a huge bite out of it, a huge chunk out of it. So the assumption is that both kayaks were attacked. They only found the one, or the one kayak was attacked and the other person tried to help, but they both disappeared and they never found their bodies again. But great white sharks attack things larger than themselves. And you can imagine a kayak going across the water. Now I'm paddling my kayak like this, and it's splash, 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 splash. And a shark hears this splash, 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 and it picks the pressure waves up through its lateral line, and it goes in to investigate because they're opportunistic as well, and it sees this thing on the surface, and they do recognize size. And I mentioned this in an earlier video about self-awareness. One great white shark knows whether it's bigger or smaller than another great white shark, and we're going to be discussing that. Actually, I'm going to discuss it now, but I'm not sure how it works. But in any case, so this kayak is moving on the surface, and it might be 6 meters long, or let's say it's 5 meters long, and the shark is 4 meters long. The shark will readily, often, go up and grab and attack that kayak. So that, to me, is a great white shark attacking prey larger than itself. So I stick to that. I know that there are people out there that won't agree with me, but I do not believe that great white sharks are only macro predators. They will attack prey larger than themselves, especially if the prey is injured, and also when the prey is not injured. So that's what I can tell you about the prey spectrum. It's always been accepted that they're macro predators. Prey spectrum goes on like that. Just about everything smaller than itself is in that prey spectrum, including turtles and that kind of thing. The one thing that's not really in a great white shark's prey spectrum is birds. They don't like eating birds. Tiger sharks will readily attack and kill birds, marine birds, but great white sharks don't. I mean, I've seen them attack a bird, grab a bird, and actually just spit it out again, and the bird is all rattled and it calms down and off it flies. I've seen them grab birds, take the birds down underwater, and then let the bird go, and the bird pops to the surface, and the bird is fine. Penguins often bear the scar across their back from great white sharks, and these are young great white sharks using the penguins as target practice, honing their hunting skills. So it's very seldom that you'll find a penguin that's actually bitten by a great white shark. You'll normally find that across its back it's got a scar where a great white shark has whacked it with its top jaw, but they don't feed on birds, which is very interesting. Maybe they don't like the feathers, or that, I mean, they're oily as well. Birds are oily. Great white sharks don't feed on birds. But they are not, according to me, just macro predators. They will attack things larger than themselves. And I did mention I'm going to talk about self-awareness. I'm going to talk about it more in depth when we go into white shark behavior. But while I'm chatting on this subject, this is something that nobody has thought about before. And I like to pat myself on the back once in a while, because, as I explained, the way I learned about great white sharks, and I explain this very, very in depth with white shark behavior, is I learned to think like a great white shark. So every time I went out there, and I'm going to tell you the story of when I actually learned to think like a great white shark in order to really understand their behavior. But What was I talking about? Oh, self-awareness. One great white shark knows that it's bigger or smaller than another white shark, and we don't know how they know this. And what's interesting is that if you look at terrestrial animals, for instance, you take two wildebeest, male wildebeest, trying to show dominance, and a smaller wildebeest will take on a larger wildebeest, and they'll fight an older, larger wildebeest to gain territory or take over the herd. Lions as well. You'll find a younger, even smaller lion taking on an older, big lion and going into conflict with the bigger lion if it's trying to take over the pride. Or another lion will come over and try and take the pride away from this lion, and the size doesn't really matter with them. But with great white sharks, you don't have that. You don't have them actually fighting for territory, etc. The only time you'll have conflict between great white sharks is when there's food involved, and a younger one doesn't give a larger one more respect or respect. So let's say there's a 500-pound seal that a big shark has just killed, okay? And there's another, so the big shark's 4 meters long, and there's another two sharks in the area. There's a 3-meter one and there's a 2.5-meter shark, great white shark. The biggest shark, that 4-meter one, has dominance over that seal that is killed, and it can consume the entire seal if it wants to. And the other two smaller sharks will just circle around and they'll mind their own business. But if the seal is too large for the big shark to consume completely, it'll actually feed from it, then back off, and the 3-meter one might move in and start feeding on the seal, and then it'll back off, and then the 2.5-meter one will come in and take a chunk and back off, and then maybe the 3-meter one will come back in and eat from the seal. But while it's feeding, the 4-meter one comes back, and the 3.5-meter one will back off straight away, because it knows that the other one is larger, therefore it's dominant. So it's social hierarchy based on size. And one day I was watching this and I thought, but how the hell does that great white shark that's 4 meters long know that it's bigger than that great white shark that's 3.5 meters long? And how does that 3.5 meter great white shark know that it's smaller than the 4-meter one? And the social hierarchy is very, very strong. Great white sharks don't like conflict. In fact, when let's say you got two sharks that are the same size, so I'm going to talk about this behavior, and you got two 4-meter great white sharks, they'll never come at each other like nose to nose. I'm just giving an example. Like, they'll never face off with each other. They got all these different things. They'll posture, they'll gape at one another. They sort of like spar, like two boxers in a ring that are just sizing each other up, but nobody's really taking a swing at the other boxer. And the great white sharks will do that kind of thing. And when they eventually, let's say the confrontation escalates to a point where both sharks want that seal, and both sharks are 4 meters long, they'll never come at each other nose to nose, because there's a 50% chance that when they break off, they can actually collide and injure each other. They always come at an angle. They always face off at an angle, which means that there's a 100% chance that they won't have physical contact and they'll move away from each other like that. However, on several occasions, I have seen and witnessed smaller sharks not giving a larger shark the respect due. And the larger sharks are generally patient, and more often than not, they won't really bother too much about it. But if the larger shark is really dominant, and the larger shark is really motivated and hungry and wants to take the bait or the food or the carrion, and the smaller one doesn't give it enough respect, the harder one, the larger shark will often come and just whack the smaller shark, nip it or whack it. And on 2 occasions, I've actually seen a larger great white shark kill a smaller shark, not to feed on it, just kill it, because it got so agitated, so frustrated with the smaller shark's disrespect, for want of a better term, that it actually came up, whacked the smaller shark, ripped it in half almost, or ripped its gills out, killed it, and just let it go. And then came back and started feeding around the boat. So that's what I got to say. And I hope you've enjoyed this series on biology. I've enjoyed talking about it. It's a lot of fun talking about great white sharks. So this is the biology, the general biology series done. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I've left out. Well, if there is, you can ask me a question. You can send an email and ask me a question about something you're interested in, and I will do my best to answer it. But I can't carry on talking about biology. So I've given you general biology of the great white shark, and I just want to say thank you for watching this series, and I hope you learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to giving you everything I can on white shark behavior. And then the real fun part is White Shark Chronicles, all the amazing experiences I've had with these extraordinary animals. And there's some stories that, the stories I'm going to tell you in White Shark Chronicles will also teach you about great white sharks. I think I need to go ahead and have some lunch now. So thanks everybody, and I'll catch you on white shark behavior, complex behavior.